Gentlemen, I'm going to be completely honest with you today because this is a conversation that far too many physicians avoid and that far too many men never get the chance to have. If you've been noticing weaker erections, softer performance, or significantly less sensitivity than you used to feel, I need you to understand something important. This is not simply the unavoidable result of getting older. A significant part of the problem may actually be the way you masturbate. I understand that hearing this from a female urologist might feel uncomfortable, but I've spent 15 years sitting across from men who are frustrated, quietly embarrassed, and silently carrying the weight of sexual health issues that are, in the vast majority of cases, entirely addressable. And in my clinical experience, one of the most consistently overlooked contributors to erectile dysfunction in men over 50 is not age, not genetics, and not a medication side effect list. It's the private habits they've been repeating without ever questioning for decades. The routines you've built over the years could be quietly and consistently training your body toward dysfunction, weakening blood flow, numbing nerve sensitivity, disrupting the hormonal signals that support strong, reliable erections. And because these habits live entirely in private, men rarely examine them. So they keep repeating the same 4 critical mistakes year after year without ever knowing they're causing real, measurable harm. In today's video, I'm going to name those 4 mistakes directly and honestly. I'm going to explain what's happening biologically when you repeat them, and I'm going to give you practical, evidence-based steps to correct each one. Naturally, no prescriptions, no supplements, just real physiological understanding paired with intentional behavioral change. Stay with me until the end, because once you begin addressing these habits, you will notice genuine differences. Firmer, more reliable erections. Improvements in prostate health. A return of sensitivity and pleasure that you may have assumed was simply part of getting older. A confidence in your own body that you deserve to feel at every stage of life. Before we go any further, if this content is valuable to you, please tap the like button and subscribe. It helps more men find these conversations. And leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from today. I genuinely love seeing men from every corner of the world showing up for their health. It reminds me every single day why this work matters so much. All right, let's get into it. Here is a truth that too many physicians never actually communicate to their male patients. Erectile dysfunction is not a sentence written into your biology the moment you pass a certain birthday. Yes, testosterone gradually declines over time. Yes, blood vessels lose some of their natural elasticity and flexibility. Yes, nerve sensitivity shifts. But what a growing body of research increasingly confirms is that the manner in which you stimulate yourself, particularly when you've been doing it the same way for decades, actively reshapes your neurological pathways, alters your blood flow patterns, and changes the way your body responds to arousal. Let me explain the neuroscience because it genuinely matters here. Your brain operates on a principle called neuroplasticity. Every time you repeat a particular pattern of stimulation, you reinforce the neural pathways associated with it. Your nervous system becomes literally rewired to expect that specific input. This is an extraordinary capacity when used with intention, but it becomes a serious liability when the patterns you've reinforced over a lifetime are physiologically harmful or hormonally counterproductive. Many of the most common habits men carry into their 50s and beyond were formed quickly, often in adolescence, frequently under time pressure, and almost always without awareness or intention. They became automatic, repeated without examination for 30, 40, sometimes 50 years. And over that time, those patterns produce very specific effects: desensitized nerve endings, reduced oxygen delivery to erectile tissue, and a brain conditioned to require artificial or extreme stimulation to even trigger arousal. This means that natural, embodied intimacy begins to feel slow, insufficient, or simply not enough. The remarkable thing, and this is what I tell every man who comes into my office feeling like it might be too late, is that the same adaptability that allowed your body to develop these dysfunctional patterns is the exact same adaptability that allows it to recover. I have seen men in their 60s and 70s make significant, meaningful recoveries in sexual function and confidence simply by changing their habits consistently and patiently over a period of weeks. The body's capacity to respond to better input is genuinely extraordinary, and I never take it for granted. You are not broken. You are not past the point of return. You have simply been training your body in the wrong direction. And that can change. I'm Dr. Cyra Malik. I've been practicing urology for over 15 years, with a particular focus on male sexual health, prostate function, and hormonal optimization. My goal in every clinical encounter and in every conversation like this one is to give men the honest, evidence-grounded information they were never given, so that they can make real changes that restore their vitality, their confidence, and their quality of life. So let's count down the 4 worst masturbation mistakes that silently contribute to erectile dysfunction, and let's talk about what you can do differently, starting today. #tag mistake number 1. Relying on adult content every single time. Let me start with the most widespread and arguably the most damaging habit I encounter in clinical practice. Using adult videos or explicit images as the required stimulus every single time you masturbate. In the moment, this seems entirely harmless. The content is endlessly available, intensely stimulating, and constantly novel. Every session offers something new, something more extreme, something engineered specifically to maximize your physiological response in the shortest possible time. So why would anyone question it? Because your brain was not designed for that environment. Your natural arousal system evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to respond to real-world cues: warmth, touch, scent, voice, the slow and meaningful build of anticipation, genuine human connection, and presence. These are the inputs your neurological hardware was built to process. When you bypass them entirely in favor of high-intensity, on-demand screen stimulation, your brain begins to recalibrate in directions that are deeply damaging to your long-term sexual health. Neurologically, your brain begins to require that artificial level of intensity to trigger the dopamine release that initiates arousal. Your reward circuitry shifts its baseline expectations upward. What once required a gentle touch, a warm memory, or an engaged imagination now requires something far more extreme to generate the same neurochemical response. Researchers have compared this progressive desensitization to the tolerance effect observed in habitual substance use. The dose required keeps increasing while the natural capacity for pleasure keeps diminishing. Physiologically, nitric oxide, the molecule your blood vessels require to dilate and allow the blood flow that creates and sustains erections, is triggered primarily by genuine neurological arousal. When your arousal system becomes desensitized, nitric oxide release becomes less efficient. Blood flow to erectile tissue becomes less robust. Erections become less firm, less reliable, and harder to sustain. Emotionally and relationally, real intimacy begins to feel slow, quiet, and insufficient. Not because intimacy itself has changed, but because your neurological expectations have been reset towards something that simply does not exist in real human relationships. This creates a painful and demoralizing gap between what your brain now expects and what natural intimacy actually delivers. It affects confidence, connection, and satisfaction in ways that extend far beyond the bedroom. But here is the hopeful, clinically grounded truth. This recalibration can be reversed. Neuroplasticity works powerfully in both directions. Begin by deliberately removing screen-based stimulation from your sessions. Replace it with imagination, with memory, with focused, intentional attention on physical sensation, breathing, and bodily awareness. Your first several sessions without that external input will likely feel frustratingly muted. That is entirely normal. That is your nervous system beginning to detox from chronic overstimulation. Within 2 to 4 weeks, most men begin to notice a genuine and meaningful shift. Natural arousal becomes more accessible. Sensitivity begins to return. Erections come more easily without artificial input. The brain, given the opportunity to recalibrate, relearns to respond to the stimuli it was always designed to respond to. Your brain is your most powerful sexual organ. Train it intentionally and consistently, and it will reward you in ways that no screen ever could. Hashtag mistake number 2. Misusing edging. The practice of deliberately approaching the threshold of climax and then pulling back before completion can be a genuinely useful technique when practiced with appropriate moderation and correct form. In clinical terms, it builds ejaculatory control, enhances stamina, and can make climax more intense and satisfying when used properly. I would not dismiss it entirely. But what I see consistently in clinical practice is a pattern of significant misuse that produces results exactly opposite to what men are hoping for. Men who edge improperly push themselves right to the very edge of climax, stop abruptly, and then repeat that cycle over and over again, sometimes for 60 to 90 minutes or even longer in a single session. They come to me confused and frustrated about why their erections feel less firm than before, why their sensitivity has dulled, and why climax has become either elusive or paradoxically uncontrollable. Let me explain the physiology of what's happening. When you bring yourself repeatedly to the threshold of climax without allowing the body to complete its natural cycle, you are placing extreme and sustained demand on the entire arousal system. Your pelvic floor muscles, which play a critical role in both maintaining erections and regulating ejaculation, become progressively fatigued through repeated cycles of maximum activation and abrupt withdrawal. The vascular structures within the penis experience repeated demands for full engorgement, followed by sudden, incomplete de-escalation. Over time, this pattern disrupts the normal communication between your nervous system and your vascular system. The reliability of that signaling degrades. Nerve calibration in the pelvic region is also affected, leading to a form of dysfunction that can manifest as either premature ejaculation or significant difficulty reaching climax at all. These are two ends of a spectrum that are both rooted in the same underlying disruption caused by unresolved extended arousal cycles. There is also a hormonal dimension worth noting. Extended sessions of incomplete arousal affect cortisol output and testosterone metabolism in ways that, repeated over time, contribute to fatigue, reduced libido, and impaired recovery between sessions. The solution is not to abandon edging entirely. It is to practice it within appropriate boundaries. Pull back from the threshold earlier than you currently do, while you are still genuinely in control rather than teetering at the absolute brink. Keep edging sessions to 15 to 20 minutes rather than extending them indefinitely. And critically, always allow a complete natural release at the end of your session. Your body is physiologically designed to complete this cycle. Repeatedly interrupting it without resolution is like repeatedly revving an engine without ever allowing it to reach operating temperature. Over time, the system begins to break down. Practiced with discipline and clear limits, edging strengthens your sexual response. Practiced in excess, it reliably and progressively undermines it. Hashtag mistake number 3. Rushing through it, I understand why speed became habitual. Think back to your 20s. Testosterone was abundant, blood vessels were supple and responsive, nerve endings were acutely sensitive, and your body accommodated whatever pattern you brought to it without complaint or consequence. Rushing to climax felt effortless and cost nothing. After 50, the physiological landscape has shifted in ways that make rushing genuinely counterproductive and over repeated sessions measurably harmful. When arousal is triggered quickly and resolution is pursued immediately, there is insufficient time for the vascular changes necessary to produce a firm, fully supported erection to complete. The smooth muscle tissue within the erectile chambers of the penis must relax and expand to allow blood to fill them completely. This process requires adequate time and sufficient nitric oxide signaling to execute properly. When you rush, this process is cut short every single time. The practical result is erectile tissue that never fully fills with blood, erections that are softer, less durable, and less satisfying than they should be. Over repeated sessions with this pattern, the tissue begins to show the cumulative effects of chronically inadequate oxygenation. Penile tissue health, like the health of any vascularized tissue in the human body, depends entirely on consistent, adequate blood flow to remain vital and functional. Short circuit that flow repeatedly over months and years, and you will see structural changes that manifest as progressively worsening erectile function. There is also an important psychological dimension that compounds the physical issue. Rushing trains your nervous system to associate sexual response with urgency and speed. When intimacy with a partner calls for something slower, more connected, and more fully present, your body and your nervous system feel genuinely disoriented. The inability to shift gears becomes a source of anxiety that feeds directly back into the physical difficulty, creating a cycle that is hard to interrupt without understanding its root cause. The solution is beautifully simple, though it requires deliberate, consistent practice. Slow down, deliberately and intentionally. Focus on your breathing throughout the session. A slow, deep inhale through your nose, followed by a full, controlled exhale through your mouth, does two things simultaneously and powerfully. It activates the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system, which governs sustained arousal and vascular dilation, and it stimulates nitric oxide production in the endothelium of your blood vessels, which is precisely what those vessels need to deliver the robust blood flow that sustains firm erections. This single habit change alone can make a measurable difference in erectile quality over time. Pay conscious attention to your muscle tension throughout the session. Many men habitually clench the pelvic floor, abdomen, and inner thighs during sexual activity without realizing it. This muscular tension constricts blood flow and works directly against erectile function. Consciously soften and release that tension. Allow your body to stay open and relaxed. Let arousal build the way it was designed to, gradually, with full physiological engagement at each stage, rather than rushing past it toward the finish line. When you do this consistently, erections are firmer because they are fully supported by complete blood flow. Climax, when it arrives, is richer and more physically satisfying. And when you bring this same quality of presence and pace to intimacy with a partner, the experience transforms from a performance you're trying to get through into something you're genuinely and fully inhabiting. Every time you deliberately slow down, you send a clear signal to your nervous system: there is no emergency here. This body has the capacity to function at its best, and I trust that process. Repeated consistently over weeks, your body learns to respond to that signal with the strength and reliability you've been wanting back. #tag mistake number 4. The death grip. This is perhaps the most physically damaging habit on this list, and unfortunately, one of the most prevalent. The death grip refers to using very tight, compressive pressure combined with rapid, intense friction during masturbation. In the immediate moment, the sensation is intense, and that intensity quickly becomes the expected baseline. But beneath the surface, something harmful is happening consistently and cumulatively with every session. Physiologically, chronic and excessive compression of penile tissue restricts circulation within the erectile architecture of the penis. The blood vessels and smooth muscle tissue that govern erectile function are exquisitely sensitive to the conditions they regularly operate under. Sustained, repeated compression impairs the microcirculation that keeps erectile tissue oxygenated and structurally healthy, and contributes over time to measurable declines in vascular function and tissue elasticity. Simultaneously, the nerve endings in penile tissue adapt to the level and intensity of stimulation they habitually receive. Repeated exposure to harsh, high-pressure stimulation progressively raises the threshold at which those nerves register sensation at all. This is neurological desensitization, and it is entirely consistent with everything we understand about peripheral nerve adaptation in response to chronic, intense, repetitive input. The consequence is that lighter, more natural stimulation, Exactly the kind experienced during partnered intimacy no longer registers strongly enough to maintain arousal or reach climax. This is a clinical picture I encounter frequently, and it causes real distress. A man who can perform reliably using his private habitual technique, but who struggles significantly with a partner. He can't understand what's wrong. He may assume it's a relationship issue, or a hormone issue, or simply aging. But what's actually happening is that the gap between what his nervous system now requires and what natural partnered intimacy offers has grown too wide to bridge without intervention. I want to be very clear about something, because this matters. This is not a permanent condition. It is not the irreversible consequence of age. It is a specific, trainable neurological adaptation, and it can be reversed with patience, consistency, and the right approach. The method is rehabilitative in nature. Begin by deliberately reducing the pressure you apply. Use a touch that is lighter than what currently feels natural or satisfying. Yes, it will feel less intense at first. That reduced intensity is not failure. It is the beginning of neurological recalibration. Your nerve endings are beginning to lower their sensitivity threshold back toward the range that natural stimulation can reach. Incorporate lubrication into every session. Consistently, it protects the delicate surface tissue from the micro-trauma caused by repeated friction. It facilitates smoother, more physiologically natural stimulation, and it meaningfully helps bridge the sensory gap between self-stimulation and what partnered intimacy feels like, which is exactly the bridge you need to rebuild. Vary your technique deliberately across sessions. Change your stroke pattern, your rhythm, the positioning of your grip. This prevents your nervous system from locking in to a single, overly specific pathway of response, which is a core part of how the dysfunction develops and maintains itself in the first place. Think of this as a rehabilitation program for your nervous system. The timeline varies by individual, but most men notice meaningful and encouraging improvement in natural sensitivity within 4 to 6 weeks of consistent, intentional practice. Erections become easier to achieve and maintain with natural stimulation. Pleasure from lighter touch deepens and expands. The experience of partnered intimacy becomes increasingly satisfying rather than frustrating or disappointing. Releasing the death grip is not losing intensity. It is recovering your body's full, natural capacity for pleasure and returning it to the state it was always meant to function in. Hashtag your roadmap forward. Let me bring everything together clearly before we close, because I want you to leave today with a concrete, actionable plan. Step away from constant adult content. Give your brain the opportunity to recalibrate its arousal thresholds back toward natural, real-world stimuli. Replace the screen with imagination, with memory, and with focused, embodied awareness of physical sensation. Practice edging with discipline and clear boundaries. 15 to 20 minutes, not indefinite marathons. Always allow a complete, natural release at the end. Protect your pelvic floor and your vascular system from the harm that comes with chronically unresolved arousal cycles. Slow down with intention. Focus on your breath. Release muscle tension. Let arousal build fully at every stage rather than rushing toward resolution. Give your blood vessels and erectile tissue the time and neurological support they need to function at their best. Loosen your grip. Use lighter touch. Use lubrication consistently and without exception. Vary your technique across sessions. Allow your nerve endings the time and conditions they need to recover their natural sensitivity threshold. These 4 changes, applied with consistency over weeks and months, have the genuine potential to transform your erectile function, your sensitivity, your confidence, and your experience of intimacy. I say this not as empty encouragement, but as a clinical assessment grounded in 15 years of watching men make exactly these changes and experience exactly these results. And there is one more thing I want you to hear today. Perhaps the most important thing I've said. If you have struggled with this, if you have felt frustrated, quietly ashamed, or privately defeated by your own sexual performance, none of that is a reflection of your worth, your masculinity, or your future potential. It is simply the result of habits that were never examined. In a culture and a medical environment that has never given men the honest information they deserve about their own bodies. That ends today. I want you to picture something real. Picture yourself 6 weeks from now, looking forward to intimacy rather than approaching it with dread or resignation. Feeling present and genuinely confident rather than preoccupied with anxiety about performance. Experiencing real pleasure and real connection with a partner or within yourself without frustration or the quiet sense of failure. That version of you is not a fantasy. It is a realistic and achievable outcome of the choices you make starting tonight. Erectile dysfunction is not simply aging. In so many cases, it is the accumulated result of habits. The wrong habits weaken you over time. The right habits restore you. That is one of the most empowering truths I have encountered in 15 years of practicing medicine, and I have seen it confirmed in patient after patient, year after year. So here is my challenge to you. Choose one change from today and begin tonight. Just one. Step away from the screen. Slow down your breathing. Loosen your grip. Whatever you decide to start with, start. Because every single small shift is a message from you to your own body. A message that says, I am not giving up on myself. I am choosing to invest in my health, my vitality, and my quality of life. And when you send that message consistently and patiently, your body will respond. With firmer erections, with deeper pleasure, with a confidence that makes you feel fully, genuinely like yourself again. If you found today's video valuable, please give it a like, subscribe for more evidence-based men's health content, and share it with someone in your life who needs to hear this conversation. The more openly men engage with their health, the better outcomes we all achieve together. This is your health, your confidence, your life. Take it back. I'm Dr. Cyra Malik, and I'll see you in the next video.